This is impromptu. All right, we're live.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back once again to another fantastic Trotec Laser Live here on Fridays. I'm joined by the inimitable Laser Dave. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing, Don? Very
Very
good.
well, thank you. My apologies to everyone for the delay of an hour from the email. That is fully my fault. I will take full. You can see I'm wearing black for the funeral for our 11 a.m. time slot today. I'm afraid that is entirely my fault. I had someone reach out at the last minute and ask if they could book a demo, and our producer Corey was very kind to push back the time by an hour, and Dave was kind to join us. So that again is my fault. I apologize to everyone, but thank you again for joining us. This week's session is going to be a little bit more impromptu, as Dave was saying, than typical. We are open to your questions on pretty much anything Trotec related, be it lasers, be it TS, be it Ruby in particular. I know Dave has a wide range of expertise, and I'm certainly going to take some time to steer you guys towards Dave's most recent videos that he's been posting online. I really have to ask Dave, when it comes to those videos, and if you guys haven't seen them 100%, once this is over, you're already on YouTube. I would very much encourage you to go check out the Trotec Laser USA channel in particular. I believe they're reposted to the Canada channel as well. But if you haven't seen Dave's most recent videos, they are really, really great stuff. I'm thinking of the inlays. I'm thinking of some of the AI stuff. Anyways, I don't want to talk at length. I want to hand it over to the master. Dave, when it comes to those topics, first and foremost, I've got to ask, what is usually do you have like a set list of things that you've always wanted to accomplish on the laser? Is there like certain things that you're always refining? How do you come to the subject of a video ahead of time like that?
Well, that's actually a good question. I mean, it comes in many different ways. There are, I get every request, people posting online. Just my vast experience. I mean, I've been doing this for 24 years, and you pick up a few things when you're doing this for as long as I have. And not only am I, have done it for 24 years, I also run. I've been working in actual laser labs where I have, a slew of unlimited equipment and all the materials I can think of, and realistically, anything and everything I can possibly quantify. And so these are questions that come in from, going to events, going to trade shows, getting comments and stuff like that. But people post lots of different requests. This is the latest one I just did on laser foil. It's one of those misunderstood materials. This one I've been wanting to do for a while. Actually, Mike Clark said he did it about 8-9 years ago, and he said a lot of people were interested in it, and actually suggested that I, maybe do another video specific towards laser foil. So I really started to dive into it, and I'm like, wow, this stuff. I've used it a lot in the past, mainly for like awards, and you want a really shiny name on your plaque or something like that. But I thought to myself, what else can we do? How much can we really expand this material? And as you know, color is something you can't really do on laser unless you're dealing with messy paints and stuff like that. And so this kind of gives us a lure, kind of a metallic look that can't be done any other way. And it's really easy. So I pushed the limit and pushed that out and started playing with the material and kind of realized where its thresholds was and started filming, and it just kind of evolved until it came into a much nicer looking finished video.
Absolutely.
My goal is, of course, to push the limits of the material. Instead of just doing a simple little plaque, let's go full on showcasing what this material can do, so that it'll benefit our customers.
So curious then, in terms of, and we're seeing the video play out in the background here as we're watching, but or as we're talking, pardon me, but how would you say that the use of this differs from what might be a more standard inlay, let's say, which I know is another topic that you covered lately? I mean, when you're using a foil like this, because some of the images you were showing in sort of the early roll of the video, it almost looks like they're inlaid, but they're not, right? They're cut right onto the surface of the material. How does this differ from like a standard inlay or another kind of fancy technique you might use?
Yeah, I mean, inlays are subsurface. I mean, believe it or not, at the end of this video, I actually do a subsurface metallic. So I engrave it first, and then I place the foil on top, and then I cut it, and then it drops down in. So it actually becomes a foil inlay. This is a surface material. It is a pressure-sensitive adhesive. It is not, it's kind of like a vinyl transfer, where you would place a vinyl and peel it and weed it. The difference is this is not vinyl, it's polyester. It's a permanent adhesive. So once you put it on, it can kind of be peeled off and on very quickly and within the first day or so. And then after that, it becomes bonded almost permanently. So you can see here, I'm actually peeling it off so I can place additional colors. It's not as durable because it is a surface material, so it's more susceptible to scratching and stuff like that. But it does give you that metallic luster, kind of like a vinyl transfer. And of course, you can do it in place. You can use different colors. In addition, it is laser safe. So it's made of polyester, so we can engrave through it and we can cut it. So we can peel it and stick it and peel it up to get different colors. And then in this case, you can see the little owl here. I took this little owl off of vecteezy.com and then just engraved through it. And then you peel off the outside and then you get that metallic luster. Again, this is great for ornaments, decor, signage, stuff like that. But again, if it's going to be very durable or touched and handled and stuff like that, it may not last as well because it is a surface material.
I'm glad you mentioned vinyl, because I think for anyone who's familiar with how a vinyl applique works, you'd have a very, very similar experience with this material. You'd kind of find a lot of the same things, like you say, in terms of, you know, how aggressive you can be with it on the surface and how you'd want to treat it after it's been applied. And then also, like you said, the permanence also of it. I mean, you can see Dave washing it here. It's not as though it's fragile. It's just you've got to be careful in terms of how you treat it. You know, you certainly wouldn't want to have it outdoors, let's say, for example. It'd be one of the areas where it might be limited. But I genuinely, I've said this 100 times on these videos, and I mean it. Our customers always impress me with what they accomplish after we release a video like this. So I'm so excited to see, you know, what those of you who are using lasers every day, like Dave, are able to take this away and do with it. But I think, like you said, the color is a really cool effect, in as much as it's not something that you typically see with laser applications, of course. And then also, you know, if this is something that you guys are interested in, I really hope you will check this out and let us know the results that you have with it. Because as Dave says, right now we principally have this sort of metallic color range, but so far as I am aware, this is not necessarily a product that you see from a lot of other distributors. And so if we start to see a lot of uptick in, you know, people's excitement about it, maybe we can bring in more colors, or we can start talking about, you know, what else is available from a laser foil apart from just kind of the reflective shine. Although I still think you did a great job with these. I'm glad you mentioned the inlay at the end of the video. That's sort of, I wanted to build towards that, because I secretly know it's coming. I had the chance to see this video in the pre-production stage, so I feel very spoiled in that regard. So I want to ask you, in terms of, you mentioned it already, some of the gift and market, you know, the sort of ornament market that maybe this could be useful for. Are there any other sort of customer industries, I guess, or other areas where you could see this being a really great application?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those materials, I mean, like the mirror that you're seeing right now, it catches the eye. That's the whole point. You know, anything that's reflective, foil is reflective, and that reflective aspect is going to be great at catching the eye. And what do you want for catching the eye? I mean, anything that you need to catch the eye. And so point of purchase type sales, any type of signage, any type of things that you really, really want to have somebody actually look at it. And then here's the inlay one that I was talking about, or we were talking about earlier, to where I engrave it first and then cut it and then actually just drop it down into it. So you're not actually cutting the pieces out and placing it in. But this material just adds that luster. You can't do this with paint. It just doesn't look the same. So this is like adding a film over the top that gives you that metallic, because paints just don't look the same. You can do gold leaf. It just doesn't look the same. And so this kind of gives us the best of all worlds without the mess of paints. And, you know, I mean, it just got that wow effect. And so if you're doing, you know, getting ready for Christmas would be a great one right now, because you're doing gift items, you're doing ornaments, you're doing things that kind of have that reflective wow. And that is going to be a big topic, I think. And so here's
Christmas.
An example. Yeah, Christmas.
You're so right on Christmas. Weddings is the other one I would lean towards.
Oh,
for
weddings,
sure.
That's a great idea. I didn't even think of that.
So,
I was going to show you here right now real quick, just while they're doing is I actually engraved it first, and then I placed the actual foil over the top and stick it down, and then laser cut it so that it actually drops down. So you're not putting the individual flimsy little pieces down into the cut. It's done after. So it's a little bit different technique that you wouldn't think of, I think.
Well, and that's, so I want to ask you specifically about this. I remember seeing a video from you where you showed how to do very, very intricate cutting using an engraving setting.
Yes.
So this wouldn't be something of that. You're still just running a regular style of cut here in order to get, it's just partially you're squeegeeing it down to make sure it's really in the inlay ahead of doing the cut.
Yeah, in this case, it was engraved and then cut, and then it was placed down. Another video you're thinking of is where I literally engrave all the way through a material to give you the appearance of a cut.
Yes.
And then my last video is actually a reverse engrave of a veneer and a positive engrave, and then they're married together to produce a highly intricate using aluminum foil. That's another one. Both these last videos have just shot up the ranks when it comes to actual viewage. So I you know, must be doing something right.
I would say too, you mentioned about the difference between, in the visual impact between this and say a laser paint or an inlay paint, however you want to think about it. I would also say, I mean, you guys can see it here live in the video. The time, I remember I've only painted an inlay a few times, but the only times I've caught myself doing it is when it is a very small, intricate design. And if you are not a practiced painter, I would argue, if you're not used to painting particularly small, like you couldn't pay me enough money to try and paint this dragon like that especially on a customer's piece. Never in a million years. I'd be terrified. I think you really hit on something cool too that I'd never seen before, but it's the combination of different colors in order to get kind of a really stunning effect. This is really great.
Here's a cool one. It's the same thing, it's just engraved through, but then I put epoxy resin over the top, or UV epoxy, and just domed it. You can go to my UV epoxy resin and then you just cure it over the top, because it has got a viscosity to it to where you can dome it, where you can put it in its liquid form to where it kind of gives you that bubble effect. And then you hit it with a UV light and boom, you got that 3-dimensional with metallic look.
I did want to ask you about Giggles Chuckleberry. That was quite I wasn't sure if that's an inside joke somewhere that I don't know, but it was good. It was good.
I just Googled funny names.
Yep. I mean, that'll do it. Yeah, that's top of the list. Quickly here, I just wanted to pull up some of the comments here. Asterley Engraving mentions that Dave's latest videos have been fantastic, and Jeff mentions that he's a big fan of Dave. I'm with you, Jeff, 100% there. Absolutely. A huge hello to everybody who's joined us so far. For anybody who's joining us partway through, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you again. My apologies for the time mix-up. That's my fault. But I hope if you have any questions regarding Trotec, Ruby, anything at all, you'll throw them in the chat and we will try and grab them. If there's anything we don't know, we will come back to you at a later date with it. But hopefully we can. I'm going to grab this question really quick here regarding the Trotec Speedy 300. Labor in the fiber option because the device was purchased and the fiber is not working. That would be one where I would suggest visiting TrotecLaser.com. When you visit TrotecLaser.com, it will give you the contact numbers for your local Trotec, at which time that would give you a chance to reach out to your local technician to be able to maybe have a look at your laser and find out what's going wrong there. But always, there's a great contact form at TrotecLaser.com directly for technical questions, and that would be where I would steer you to for a question like that. Dave, question on Ruby here that I wanted to throw to you from Asterley. It's 2 parts, so I will read it out to you. I have a number of different small designs that I might need to do at any given time. How do I create a job with multiple designs on the fly? And then, as I say, there's a second part here. I've tried copying and pasting, but that ends up changing the design I copy it into. I'd like to create a job with multiple different designs and run it once, then delete the job. Is copying and pasting the only way to do it?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the one thing that when running multiple designs or graphics on Ruby is when you're in the prepare screen. The goal is to have individual jobs ready to go, designs. And so in Ruby, you can have it. You have 2 sections. You have jobs and you have designs. The designs are individual designs. And so when you go into the prepare screen, then the main screen where you're doing the positioning and stuff onto your main field, you can then select the little arrow on the left, making sure that you're in the design section. When you click that arrow on the left, you can pull all those designs onto that one job. And then you can actually sit there and run them. The other thing that I do is if I'm running multiple jobs on one field, if you take that job and just move it off of the page, it won't run. So if I'm running one and I don't want to delete it, I don't want to copy and paste it, or I just want to delete it. And then when I select on the jobs, or the designs, not the jobs, because you can't bring a job into an existing job, because a job already has your parameters, your materials, everything preset to it. Now a design does not. And so if you click the little arrow on the button, the left button there, it'll bring any design. So you can click as many of your designs from the left list while in the actual prepare screen, and bring them into your main field. and then run them, adjust them. If you may need to make edit, you can click on that design, click the little pencil icon, and then it'll take you into the edit button. And you can make deletes. You can delete sections of it, modify it, and then hit update. It'll bring it back into your main job. And so you can make modifications to that. So this allows you to make all these adjustments on the fly while you're running without having to copy and paste.
Yes. And so follow-up question for you. This is one that I had in the customer meeting that I had this morning. A customer was asking about. Suppose they have 3 different jobs or 3 different designs, pardon me, in one job. Would you suggest giving each one its own color and Z offset in order that it, adjusts to each material? Or would they be better to just run them as 3 separate jobs entirely and not risk the head crash and jumping from material to material?
I mean, it really depends on the scenario you want to run. Different colors are going to run at different times, and so you can assign different parameters to it. So there's advantages there. The drawback is when you run them all separately, they take 3 times as much time because the laser does that whole job, then it moves to the next color. So you don't get that efficiency of that left and right motion. And
True.
So if you want more efficiency, you want to definitely run them together if you can, if they're the same parameter. If they do need to be different parameters or different Z-axis, then of course, yes, you would need to run them as a different color or a different operation. So it really depends on the efficiency, if the material needs to be adjusted. But if they are the same parameter, then run them at the same time. I would always do that just for efficiency and productivity requirements.
I agree. That makes perfect sense. My concern is always the head crash too. That if it's something that you've set up and ahead of time, you've got to position your items just so to make sure that the Z is going to offset and you're not going to have a bump, then fine. But keeping in mind that if you have a multi-operator scenario or anything like that, I always feel safer just saying. And as you said too, the XY optimization is something always to keep in mind. Certainly. Quick question here from Tricera Man that I think is a great question. I appreciate it. Thank you. You have a Trotec Speedy 100 currently using Job Control as your primary software. You can, absolutely, for anybody who didn't know, visit TrotecLaser.com and download Ruby at any time. For any Trotec owner, it is a free software. Would you recommend changing? Why or why not?
That is a great question. I understand change is hard. And learning new things can be difficult, but Ruby is exponentially better than Job Control.
I agree.
It has, I would say, 50 or 60 features that you just don't have in Job Control. You want to trace, you want to outline, you want to adjust photographs, you want to copy paste. I mean, the array features, you have the ability to nest within Ruby. So what you're doing by staying back to Job Control is limiting yourself from having all these new capabilities and efficiency, speed, productivity that you just are not going to get. We still support Job Control. It's a great software, and I understand that, but it is one of those softwares that it's just not being updated anymore. If you want all the new capabilities, go to Ruby. And the other benefit too is you can run them both at the same time. While you're learning Ruby, go back and forth to Job Control. You can actually run them both at the same time. And so I would highly suggest Ruby just for the convenience and the features. You agree, Don?
I agree. I 100% agree. I would say too, depending on your setup, there are some online features that are completely, just to make sure that it's very clear, you are not obliged to be online. I know there are some other laser brands where you either have a subscription fee monthly and the software runs online or anything like that. Ruby can be run entirely offline like your Job Control truly is or currently is, or you can run it online and be able to access it remotely from different places. The other thing I would say is you would be shocked at how easy it is to take the files and jobs you've already made for Job Control and transpose them into Ruby. You should not worry about any wasted time in terms of having to rebuild your jobs or anything like that. In fact, I would argue that Ruby is probably even easier to bring new jobs in than Job Control has ever been. The number of job or file formats that you can just drag and drop at this point is huge and growing bigger every day. So it's something that I would really encourage you, because it is free as well. Take some time when you have a minute here or there. It's definitely worth a look at very least. And like Dave says, just because you download Ruby and start playing around with it, start kind of feeling your way around, does not mean your Job Control is now in the recycle bin at all. You can flip back and forth between the two while you get more comfortable with Ruby. And then once you feel good about doing the switch, by all means, pull the trigger.
Yeah, something else I wanted to bring up too is, you mentioned that you can go online. It's more only in your network. You can't
Yes.
run Ruby remotely from an offsite location. So only in your local network. Anyone that is on there, you can access any machine that is on the Ruby from anywhere in your local network, not remotely online. The other thing too is learning Ruby, I understand, can be quite involved. But if you go to mytrotec.com, which is our portal, it's going to give you, we have videos that I have created. It's step by step. It's going to walk you through all the screens. Within an hour, you could basically be fully trained on every little bell and whistle and feature that is in Ruby. It's all right there for you. It's also on our YouTube channels. It's readily available, training ready to go for you, so that there will be no questions.
Agreed. Yeah, and thank you for that. You're exactly right. I should say, ahead of pulling up this question here from Timothy, this is one where, because I do not have the API, the Ruby beta, I might have to toss it over to you, Dave. But maybe this is one that you would be able to tell me about. If not, then certainly, again, we'll try and come back to you on it. Asking if we can get some getting started documentation with the Ruby API. So far as I know, I think they do try and post official patch notes and things anytime there is an official update that went through, and there is something that I want to come back to here to talk about Ruby 2.9. But I'm not sure if they release any sort of documentation with the API version or with the beta version of Ruby as the API is being rolled out.
Not that I know of, no. Yeah, usually it's specific to email to the people that are on that list. Currently, yeah, you can go to mytrotec.com. I actually talked to Corey, which is the lady that does our marketing stuff, about updating our MyTrotecs to support the new 2.9, which has all the new features and stuff like that. And it does actually talk about the API right there on the 2.9. I have it up on my screen right here. And so if you really want to see the API and the features and stuff like that, you can go to, right now it's on rubyhelp.com. So you can go to rubyhelp.com, but we're going to put it on our mytrotec.com and mytrotec.ca, which are the two local portals for United States and Canada.
And if you haven't been to your local MyTroTalk portal, I would highly encourage you to do so. Outside of the stuff that Davis just mentioned, there's a lot of great resources there, so I hope you'll find some great and useful stuff on there. Timothy also mentions in a later comment that they've submitted a Ruby idea using the feature right in Ruby that allows you to submit feedback and ideas and things. And so I would highly encourage all of you, if you have any questions or suggestions for what you'd like to see in Ruby, definitely follow their suggestion and submit an idea directly through Ruby. I know the team is definitely still watching those and trying to be as on top of things as possible. Dave, would you want to speak a little bit to, maybe some of the things in 2.9 that you're most excited about? I know it's just a recent launch, but so far my experience with 2.9 has been great, and I'd love to hear your feedback on, some of the new things that you've been using and are really liking.
Yeah, the new 2.9, it's not like a major version, so there's not like huge, sweeping changes by any means, but there are a lot of refinements that have just made it more user-friendly, more refined. The automation feature that allows you to actually create, basically, the old version or non-run on Ruby machines, the ones without the onboard LCD, could not in the past actually, you couldn't have what we call the hot folder. So you couldn't just drop a file into a folder. You could, on the non-run on Ruby machines, you could drop a file into a folder and it would just miraculously show up in Ruby, which is great. You didn't have to drag it in or import it. Well, the new version actually have it's an automation feature. So if you're actually using the automation feature, you can actually build a profile now. So say you have, you do tumblers all the time and you have customer generated art. Well, if that customer generates that art, you can now build it into a folder to where that file goes directly into a folder on your desktop or your computer anywhere, and then it automatically sidesteps everything. If you've used the profiles in the past, you can set up a profile to say, okay, this is the parameter I want to use. This is the device, the rotary, for example, and this is the position I need my graphics set at. And then when you drag it into that profile, it automatically bypasses everything in Ruby. So you can automate the entire process. Well, the new 2.9 has this feature to where you can do multiple folders and make them in your desktop. And you can drag one in and say, oh, I'm doing print and cut on this one. And all your parameters are set. And it just streamlines right to that. And so for any computer in your network, you can just drag that design file or save it right into this folder anywhere on your network. it automatically bypasses everything, and it's on the laser system ready to actually run. So it truly automates some of that feature using the automation features. The other thing too is, in the past, if you grab the little cursor while you're in the prepare screen and drag it over, it's going to give you an error unless you're on the machines that you can plug directly in. Which is the non-run on a Ruby machines. The new 2.9 has eliminated that process to where you can now grab that little cursor and move it over, or you can put in a Z-axis move and it'll make those motions. It does make you hit the stop button twice to confirm that you're near the machine for safety reasons. But what that does is it allows you to position that cursor and just drag it to where you want it, and the head moves to that for focusing or for targeting or locating. That is a nice little feature now added to the 2.9 software. So the run on Ruby machines, you can now actively move your head cursor around with your mouse on your computer screen if you need or want to.
I love that feature. I'm so glad to see that feature back. I always, it took me a while to unlearn not using it when the Ruby machines came out. And then now, for anyone who's not sort of in Eastern Canada, I drive one of our laser vans. And so the way that my van is laid out, my laptop that I'm working off of is on the entire other side of the van from where my laser head is, or where my laser is positioned. So I'd have to walk over and use the little cursor and then walk back to my laptop. And I always thought about customers who, how much I love Ruby, as you said, on a local network to be able to send things from multiple floors. And it's kind of that ease of use has gotten closer and closer and lesser every single time. Quick question for you here from Lisa. I think it's really an interesting question. She asked if there's a video, but I'm just curious to know, what the workflow that you might suggest would be. So she's asking about placing multiple name tags into a sheet in Ruby without dragging them on one at a time. But I guess they do hundreds of name tags, and the art file is set up in multiple pages.
Yeah, I mean that would be using I can never remember the name we actually call it.
It's like the data merge, or it's like that kind of
It basically, it's like a print merge type feature.
Yes.
We have a unique name that it just doesn't roll off the tongue.
Tro something, I'm sure.
I need to look it over here. But we actually have a data plate feature. Came out in version 2.7, and it allows you to do a CSV type file. So you can take a list from your like Excel or something like that and create it into a CSV file, and then drop that list of names, dates, serial numbers, barcodes, whatever into that, and it'll automatically populate your nameplates or barcodes or tags automatically. So as long as you have that list of names or dates or serial numbers, you can draw one or multiple in there. We have a video on our version 2.7 is when that came out. And you can watch the little video. It's on mytrotec.com if you want to watch the video exactly how to do it, how to set up that nameplate. And then once you create one on the screen, you can then array it to match either a template or a fixture. It does have a little bit of setup initially, but once you're done, it's just a matter of dropping in that new list of names. And then, or it could be, like I say, it could be a first name on one column, a last name on another column, a phone number on a third one, a serial number on a fourth one, as many as you'd like. Drops it into that template, and then automatically arrays it into multiple pages with every name, date, serial number that you identify into the field. And then it's just a matter of putting the tags onto your fixture and pushing start.
Corey's got our, bring the screen up here. She's got the mytrotec.com videos up right here. So definitely, absolutely, Dave is exactly right. Dave, would you be able to speak in a little bit more detail? Not for me, of course. I totally understand the best ways to use an array and what an array is. But, for somebody who maybe is new to what an array is or what purpose it serves, how would you kind of, can you explain it like I'm 5?
An array is basically when you have there's a couple different. You can use the feature that automatically creates it, but the other array feature, whenever you select an item in your main prepare screen, you see that looks like a little, like 4 little dots button. Click that dot button, and then what it does is it actually automatically duplicates that across the field. And you can identify how far apart each one of them are. In this way, once you have one and you want to fill up, say you have a sheet of Trolase plastic or acrylic or wood or something, and you want to repeat something across the entire piece of material, but you don't want to sit there and copy and paste it or duplicate it across that piece and then align it manually. You can literally just click the array button, and it literally just within a pull of the mouse fills up that data instantly within seconds. You hit apply and then you hit start. It's just saving productivity and duplicating products.
Would it be fair to say in this grid of videos that we're showing here, this is kind of like, say, a 2x4 array in a way, in the most basic way of thinking about it, that it's kind of like you can grid out things, like you said, on a set, a set distance and a set size, and then that way they duplicate out and you don't have to do that, like, say, painstaking, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste.
Exactly. You are exactly right.
Thank you for whoever that was helpful for, not me at all. Quick question here from Jeff about whether Don or Dave will be at UV Energized, in Nashville next week. I unfortunately will not. I have a show here in Montreal next week.
No, it's East Coast type stuff. I don't typically do a lot of those, so unfortunately, I will not. I'm not sure who's going to be there, but
I believe Ron's going to be there. I think. I think so. I don't want to promise anything. Look, let me promise you this. Whoever you meet at the Trotec booth will be knowledgeable and will be very happy to help you, I'm very sure. I apologize, Jeff. I wish we could, but maybe at a later show or at a later day, definitely. Oh, it looks like, okay, Jack, Jason, and Daryl. Okay. So, yes, you're in very, very good hands with the gentlemen that are going to be there at the booth next week.
Very knowledgeable guys.
Yes, absolutely. Quick question here from Astrolay regarding metal cutting. So can Trotec lasers, fiber lasers specifically, cut copper foil? So, Dave, please take it away.
Foil thicknesses are possible. That is one, both on the, flatbed machine or the galvo systems. Foil thicknesses are just that. Like aluminum foil thicknesses, extremely thick material. It's actually quite easy to do with the fiber lasers. 20 watts is a little bit slow. 50-watt fiber laser is a little better for it. It actually cuts quite nicely. But like I say, only foil thicknesses. And so think of your tin foil in your drawer. You roll it out onto the laser machine. It has no problem cutting that type of stuff. Thicker materials than that, once you start getting into, 0.1, I would say 0.3, 0.4 millimeters, or, about, I would say 10 thousandths of an inch or thicker, it's not something we would recommend.
Yeah. I know for a long time, our official stance on it was that we do not do it. But, in my experience, we do have jewelry customers who've had some success with it. But Dave is exactly right. The metric for how thick is too thick is going to be, pardon the pun, but razor thin, right? It's going to be very, very small. What I would suggest is, particularly because metal material tends to be so expensive as well, that you just get the smallest possible piece you can to do a quick test. Obviously, the engraving on materials, even of that thinness, will be still beautiful. But in terms of the cutting ability, the thinner is going to be the better, as a very general, principle.
You have a few more. You can get a little bit thicker with a galvo system, because you can go around 30, 40, 50 different passes until it cuts through. You start to see a lot of slag and build up as you get a little bit thicker. And if you have a higher wattage laser and you have enough time, you can get through a little bit thicker material. But definitely understand that it's not something that we really shine on, because we use lower wattage lasers, and the drawback is, most of the metal cutting lasers out there, that's all they do is cut metal.
Yes.
But none of those metal cutting lasers are going to be able to do the finesse and the detail, the engraving and stuff like that. And so you've kind of got a mix between the two, unfortunately.
100%. And I will say too that, the metal cutting machines that I've seen by and large are monsters. They're big, huge, monstrous things. And so what I was always told also is that, anytime you cut, so Dave, you tell me, this is I'm not going to lie, I use these opportunities and these webinars to the best of my ability. What I was always told too is that a lot of those big metal cutting lasers, as you said, are made just for doing that metal cutting, and they're not capable of that finesse. A lot of that finesse comes down to the very specifically engineered laser head that we have, that's designed to kind of give those tolerances that we guarantee and what I was always told is, when you cut or engrave anything on the laser, you're always going to have the chance of little particles, coming up, obviously, as you cut and engrave, and that the risk with metal was that you might have a very small shaving of metal that would find its way up into the head, and at that point, put a lot of risk for your lens. Is that just,
Yeah,
I mean, one in 100
yeah,
certainly, but
I don't see that because I mean particulates don't really come off of metal.
mm,
It's more the possibility of, of heavy reflection causing damage to something else, especially when you're trying to cut metal with like a CO2. You're going to reflect that energy, and if that metal has any angle to it, now your internal components of your laser machine could basically experience a laser beam, and it could cause damage to your under part of your grids or your backside of your top lids, the underside of your motion system. I mean, it could physically cause damage. On a fiber laser, not as much because that wavelength will penetrate into it. You do get some very, very fine particles, but using air assist and blowing down on it tends to reduce any of that chance from happening. The main thing is it's just, the wavelength of fiber lasers, the wattage that we use is just so low a power. It's trying to it's like trying to cut a log with a magnifying glass in the sun. It's not real practical.
You might get there eventually, but it's going to be a lot of headache. And there are, I don't mean to send you in other directions, but there are tools built maybe more for that job than.
Way better, yeah. Right.
Yeah. Question from Triceraman that I think is interesting, if only our opinion. Is the Speedy 100 outdated, or does it need to be phased out from operation in favor of a newer model or line? I think it's an interesting question because we've recently seen the Rayjet 50 replaced with the Speedy 50. I will go on record, though, as saying that for the few remaining Rayjet 50s that we have here in Canada, I still sell them and feel like they are a bulletproof little machine. And I'll be honest with you, I still feel the same way about the 100. Like, yes, the 100 is perhaps more of an older design, or it hasn't seen as much in the way of like a facelift or a revamp of the overall design. But I absolutely adore the 100. I think particularly at that price point and that size, how convenient it is for a quarter sheet of material. I think what it offers you, again, up to 60 watts as well. In my personal opinion, I still think it's a great little machine.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, that it is, and I apologize. I should do more videos on my Speedy 100. It's one of those machines that, for the speed or the quality, the price, and the productivity you get out of this little machine, it's amazing. 100 inches per second with the acceleration curve on this machine. It's got the built-in air compressor in it. It can fit through any doorway. Yeah, you can put it on a filter cart. It's mobile. You can roll it into the back of a van. It gives you that portability. You can run it from the Ruby software. It has all the same ease and use. It doesn't have an onboard camera system, overhead camera, so it's a little outdated on that aspect. But honestly, the camera systems, they're convenient. But when it comes to using like the red dot pointer, you can position stuff within 2 or 3 seconds, so it doesn't really affect productivity. But yeah, I concur with Don. It is a great little machine. It is one of those machines that are kind of undervalued, and we don't, show it as much. But maybe I do need to, I'm gonna actually create some more content specifically for that machine just to show you how diverse it is.
Well, and I would say that. Amy, still in love with her Rayjet. Thank you, Amy. Yes, 100%. I agree. It's good to see you. What I would say also is if you guys have watched any of Dave's unboxing videos that are really, really great. From what I have heard in the back channels, and I'm sure Dave can confirm or deny, but the preparation and running up to the 100, unboxing of a 100 is a much less daunting task, let's say, than when I saw Dave starting to unbox, say, the 300 or the 360, and I thought he was going to do it by himself. I gained an incredible amount of respect for Dave because those machines are much bigger, much heavier, a little bit tougher to maneuver if you don't have 2 or 3 people around. I mean, that 100 is... like you say, for the size and its maneuverability, it's a monster. It's a great little thing.
Yeah.
What I usually tell
rooms too, which is nice. So you got a small room and you need a small footprint. That's the machine for you.
100%. You would not believe how often we have to figure out with customers how to get a machine up or down stairs through a single door. I mean, it is one of these things where if they bought a 100, I'm thrilled. I'm over the moon. One thing I often tell customers, and Dave, you can concur or maybe help me to refine my argument, but I really genuinely believe because the quality and the tolerances of marking and cutting that the Speedy laser guarantees you, regardless of which model you look at, really you should not feel nervous about picking pretty much any Speedy laser as long as it's the right size for what you need to do. I would much rather see someone invest in a smaller machine with a higher wattage than a larger machine just to have the larger machine, and then maybe have to place that investment, on a lesser wattage. I think you would get a greater life out of your laser and a far better user experience by having a higher wattage on a smaller machine, as long as it is big enough to accommodate whatever material it is you want to do. If you go for a bigger machine to have that bigger machine, I mean, they are great. Don't get me wrong. If I could have a 400 in my garage, I would have it tomorrow. But at the same time, having that bigger size doesn't necessarily net you anything that a smaller machine, in terms of quality wise, at least, that a smaller machine won't be able to give you as well.
The other thing that I mention a lot of times that people do not do, if you're doing a lot of small products, one-up type products, it is far more efficient to buy 2 or 3 small machines than it is one big one. And your price point is going to be similar to buy multiple. And your overall efficiency is going to be much greater because you're able to transfer more product into multiple machines and run single or individual products or small lots of products. So if you're doing one-up type stuff, or if you're doing small little batch processes, opt for 2 or 3 Speedy 100s in place of, say, one big Speedy 400. I mean, your price point is going to be comparable for multiple machines, but your efficiency and productivity is going to be much greater going with multiple machines.
Just had to pop up this comment from Sarah. I think it speaks for itself. So did we in our previous office, and it was not a great day. I will be honest with you, particularly when we had to rebuild the doorway afterwards. But no, you're exactly right. I feel that. So I love your opinion. How do you feel about, obviously it's very dependent on your application, certainly. And I would hope that, if you guys have any questions about this, you'll reach out to your local Trotec sales rep. We're just 2 guys on the internet. One of us, meaning Dave, is a very knowledgeable guy, but regardless, how do you feel about that difference between a flex machine and having a small CO2 and a small fiber, one beside the other? Are there certain pros or cons you could see kind of going either way on that one?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages. When you have a flex machine, it is ideal. So if you have a product that, say, you're doing pocket knives that have a wood handle and a metal blade, and you need to be able to run them both at the same time, nothing beats a flex machine. It gives you the ability to hit start once, engrave both the wood and the metal all at once. Where I was saying before, multiple machines are, if you're not doing the metal at the same time, it is always better to have 2 machines. And sometimes for the price, you can get 2 machines or not much more to get both machines. And now, you have one product that's all metal, run it on the fiber machine. Another product that's all your woods or plastics and stuff, then you run on the CO2 machine. I find that if you're doing one-up type parts like pocket knives that have to do that, then a flex machine's ideal. But if you tend to do a bottom one and then the other, multiple machines are going to be your better solution.
Totally agree. I think from the sales side, which is what I represent at Trotec, I will confirm too exactly what you're saying. The price difference between a 300 flex and, let's say, like a 300 CO2 and then a small flex machine to sit alongside it is not very large. They are almost identical, because realistically, all you're paying for with that flex machine is the addition of that same tube, or a very, very, very similar tube to what you're going to find in the other machine anyway. So there'll be a slight difference in the mechanics, obviously, but apart from that, no, Dave is exactly right. In terms of volumes, being able to run 2 machines simultaneously obviously doubles, whatever that volume is. Whereas if you have to stop the wood job that you're doing in order to run the metal job in the flex machine, or vice versa, it makes that a little trickier. Question then, in terms of, with that flex source versus what you can do with the Speed Marker and the Speed Mark software, because that is the area I would argue also, for looking at a separate fiber machine, you're going to be using a different piece of software. That is an area where I think also you have a potential big gain. Is there any sort of metal or fiber application that you would not recommend for a flatbed machine, or for like a Speedy Flex style machine, that you would only push towards a Speed Marker, say?
Yeah, I mean, really, it depends on them. As we were mentioned earlier, if you're trying to do a little bit thicker cutting, slightly different, if you will, non-foil thicknesses, that's going to be a benefit. But the other one is depth. Any metal depth cannot be achieved with a flatbed machine. Fiber laser is not the same in a flatbed machine as it is in a galvo machine. Yes, it's the same wavelength, the same laser tube, but the difference in the way that laser is delivered onto the material can achieve totally different effects. A galvo laser delivers that beam with one fixed point over the top, and because of that, we can actually produce depth into metal. because it actually changes the engraving direction and angle as it's sitting there running through the material. We can do 3D engraving into the actual metal. We can also do depth into metal. And so it does give you a clear advantage. You can also do different tone ranges. You can do colors on some metals. You can even things like aluminum, where you can get a brown, you can get a whitish effect, you can get a blackish effect. Stainless steels and titaniums and stuff, you can get colored effects. It's far easier to do on a galvo machine, so it really expands your capabilities. If you're doing a lot of metals, the galvo is a better solution.
I agree. Also, for anybody who has never seen it, if you go to our YouTube page and you compare the speed of a flatbed laser, and our flatbed lasers are not slow by any means, but if you compare that to what you can accomplish with a galvo laser, it's unbelievable what you can do. Those galvo lasers,
typically 10x.
Yes, exactly. And again, it's not like our Speedies are slouches. I mean, they're called Speedies for a reason, but at the same time, yeah, those galvo lasers are incredible. If somebody were to visit our YouTube page right now, actually, one thing they might see is mention of the CL galvo. David, I don't suppose you'd be able to tell us a little bit about what a CL galvo is and how it compares to, say, a typical speed marker machine.
Yeah, the CL machine is basically CO2, and the ability to actually have those speeds and benefits on a CO2 machine over a fiber lasers. In the past, almost all galvo machines were always fiber lasers. We've dabbled a little bit. How far old? I forget. Remember that? What was that? The version we had not coming to my mind at the moment of an old CO2 galvo machine. But now we're able to actually the GS. That's the one I was thinking. You know,
Yeah.
These machines are going to give you the benefit of the speed of the galvo systems while using the using a CO2 laser. So you have that benefit. Now, there is some drawbacks of the galvo systems. You're limited in field area where what large of an area you can do, and you can't do like really big panels and stuff like that, like you can on a flatbed machine. But if you say you're doing paper cards or something, and you want to be able to cut greeting cards out, you're going to be able to cut through with a CO2 laser on that paper with a CO2 laser with a galvo system 10 times faster than you will on a flatbed machine. And so just efficiency.
The one I think of, and we've discussed recently, is tumblers. Obviously, that is a huge business right now, particularly for smaller, engraving shops and things like this. To be able to do Yeti cups, Stanley cups, that style of engraving, really, really quickly there's no better machine that we offer, I would argue.
Yeah, and it also has the 3D features built in that actually compensate for that curvature, so you don't have to place them on a rotary up into a certain point. And so you can actually get that radius around and compensate for that curvature without rotating it, allowing you to do multiple at a time with maintaining that pin sharp quality.
100%. Another quick question from Jeff here that I wanted to pull up, and I know that recently a lot of the videos that I've seen from Laser Dave have been on wood. And so as somebody here who uses a lot of wood, particularly red cedar, curious for any advice you could give if somebody is moving away from, let's say, the laser wood that we offer and wanted to try a plank of something, any general wood tips or tricks or anything you could throw out there?
I mean, when it comes to a natural material, wood is the easiest, most user-friendly, and also the highest perceived value out there when it comes to lasers. It's the easiest to work with. It's awesome material. I've never run across a wood that doesn't work with the laser in some way, shape, or form. Now, that being said, there are definitely variations within wood in species, in densities, in grain, in color. And all those things can make a big difference when it comes to actually processing wood. For example, if you etch something like an ebony versus a maple, the ebony contrast is going to be, ebony is almost black in its look. And so that contrast is going to be poor versus a maple, which is one of the brightest white woods. You're going to have the highest contrast. And so contrast definitely can make a difference. Your middle tone woods, like your redwoods, your maples, or your cherry woods and your alders or your redwoods. What was the one he just mentioned? Was it redwood?
The red cedar. Yeah.
Red cedar. Yeah. All work just fine. The other thing I tend to run into issues with wood is grain. Grain is the varying density of the wood itself. This can be problematic because lasers are extremely consistent. And when you're engraving that, the more grain that's in the wood, the more it's going to be portrayed as you engrave depth into that wood. So if you're working with woods that have a lot of grain in them, red cedar is not one of them. It's actually considered on the softer side of woods. It's going to give you consistent results. There is nothing wrong with any wood. I mean, you name the wood, stick it in the laser, go for it. Like I say, contrast can be a difference. The darker it is, the less contrast. The lighter it is, the more contrast. The other thing is density is going to affect how thick you can cut. Something like an ironwood, for example, I was able to cut through maybe 1/8 of an inch, where, something like a balsa wood, which is the softest woods, I can get through almost 2 inches with the same wattage at the same speeds. So that has a difference. So the key with woods, make sure that it's a nice smooth surface. There's not a lot of grain densities or knots. If you get like the knots, you're not going to go deep into those knots because it's a harder density area. The other thing is make sure the wood is finished prior to processing. What I mean by finished is it's got a clear coating on it, a lacquer coating. That's the only thing that's different with a laser wood is they have sanded it all smooth, and then they have coated it with a polyurethane, a lacquer, a varnish to protect that grain from staining. Because when we're engraving it, we're actually burning that wood. And that smoke haze will stain into the wood, and it just doesn't look as good. So whatever wood you're using, go for it. Just make sure it's finished first, and then way you can wipe any staining or residue off of it. Make sure it's not got too many grains into it. Make sure it's not got a lot of knots on it. And do a test. Make sure that it works before you just assume that it's going to look good for your customers.
Always, test as often as possible in the most inconspicuous way possible. There's no way that you can ever run afoul of that. Question for you in terms of getting, I'm thinking of your recent AI video where you did some really beautiful owl engravings on some surface of wood. Question about getting really high detail into wood, because the area that I always struggle is because obviously when you're putting a lot of heat into a piece of wood, it's prone to swell, right? It's prone to, expand. Anything you could suggest to someone like me, not me, of course, that to get, higher detail, or is it just a matter of, working with those settings and the frequency to get it, just right on?
Yeah, there's actually several factors when it comes to detail. One, it is entirely dependent on the species of wood. And that is very, very important. Higher density, something like a maple or a cherry, which is on your harder spectrum, but also in lighter color, tend to work very well. And also they don't have a lot of patterning and stuff like that. When you're doing a photograph on a wood, you don't want a lot of patterning. You don't want a lot of grain. So you need to stick with species of wood that doesn't, materials like cherry, maple, birch, even into the walnut range, which is not too dark, will produce a good photograph. Power and speed settings can make a difference. Your lens can make a difference. If you have a 1.5-inch lens, it's going to give you a smaller spot size. So a dense wood, consistent grain, smooth finished look, and then combine that with running the right parameter. Too much power. Wood, when the laser pulses into wood with one individual pulse, you get about a 3x response. So it's the crater effect that you get into the material. That is basically, if you throw a pebble at a piece of sand, you get a little crater. That's what happens when the laser hits a piece of material. Right. Some materials produce bigger craters than other materials. And wood is one of those materials that will give you about a 3x return, depending on your parameter. So if you hit it with more power, you're going to get a little bit bigger crater. And what happens if that crater is too big and you put they're too close together, you're going to lose detail. And so materials like wood, overpowering can be a good thing, but you also need to make sure that that graphic or photo is not too detailed and too fine, or there's not too real big of a dark area with it. This is why the AI images that Don mentioned work so well, because the depth of field and the contrast and detail is perfect. You're not limited to photography errors and stuff because the AI has generated it absolutely perfect with a high dynamic range.
Yes. And so particularly with photo engraving style, I couldn't agree more. I think it's an area where it's really, really well suited. I would not encourage you necessarily to emulate artists, but I would say if you're doing, photo style engraving, like a lot of what you see Dave do, I think is it's incredible what you can accomplish. And also anyone who's ever tried to preset a photo for laser engraving knows what a headache it can sometimes be to make sure that you're getting that dynamic range, as you say, in the balance of lights and darks just right.
Practice too.
Oh, absolutely. And we have some great, again, I hate to keep saying go back to our YouTube page, but there are some great tutorials on there, particularly from people like Dave and like Mike and some of those others. Jeff has a last question. This will be maybe one of the last ones here. We're getting close to the top of the hour. A 4-inch lens, what substrate would I use it for? I typically use a 2-inch lens now. I will say in my experience, the 2-inch lens is a great setup for most anything. There's a reason that it is typically the sort of the go-to lens for a lot of things. It's a great all-arounder. Am I right in saying, Dave, that yes, exactly. Well, am I right in saying that a 4-inch lens would be great when you're looking for, a greater, I don't know if it's depth of field technically, but I mean, yes, thank you. Exactly. So I'm thinking of round objects is the first thing that jumps to mind for me. Things where, you want to have a little bit more flexibility in your focal distance.
Yeah, the 4-inch lens gives you two things. It gives you less angle. As that beam is coming down, you get less angle. So when you're cutting through things like softer materials like foam, for example, polyurethane foam, you don't see as much angle. Two, it gives you more tolerance. And that tolerance is anything. I was just actually engraving some skateboards. And if anybody knows what a traditional skateboard is, they have a lot of curvatures and stuff like that. And so what I would do is actually focus kind of that. I use a 4-inch lens, and I focus kind of that halfway point between the high point where I'm going to engrave and the low point. And a 4-inch lens is going to give me much more consistency in its actual look. And something like a skateboard, I'm just doing nice black and white graphics, not a big deal. Drawback is, of course, your beam diameter is 3 times the diameter as a 2-inch lens. And so you are in detail by, it's a trade-off between quality and tolerance. And so if you need the tolerance and your detail is not too high, the 4-inch lens is ideal. Where if you want the quality, but you don't need the tolerance, then that's where the 2-inch lens. And so you get that different effect. And so sometimes you'll split the difference and do a 2.5-inch lens. So you get a little better tolerance, but you also maintain the detail. If you want the numbers, a 4-inch lens has a spot size of 12 thousandths of an inch. A 2-inch lens has a spot size of 4 thousandths of an inch, 4 to 5 thousandths. So you are literally seeing that big of a difference. And that spot size is what creates your little crater. And that crater, if it's 4 times the size, you can kind of understand what it means by detail. And so there's the advantage of a 4-inch. The other advantage of a 4-inch lens is when you need clearance. So you're doing a mug handle. Or if you want to engrave a box and you want to engrave down inside that box, when you need to be able to clear it as long as it's not too high. It's going to give you that clearance and distance to where you can actually clear that and engrave down inside of a valley of something without physically hitting the other option. I had a customer one time have a custom lens made by the lens manufacturer and did a 7-inch lens. And then he used tumblers, and actually engraved down inside into the bottom of the, or not tumblers, wine, or they weren't wine glasses. They were, I'm sorry,
pint glasses.
Yeah, pint glasses. That's the word I'm trying to think of. And so he would like laser engrave simple, because the beam diameter is huge at that point. He'd engrave like a little smiley face inside the glass at the base. And so he was able to clear the top. And so if you put a smiley face and you pour beer on it, bubbles come off the shape of that smiley face. So great little application. Doesn't require a lot of detail. He could do simple little basic designs, and there you go. So clearance, tolerance, and detail, as also angle, or why you do want to use that lens.
Yeah, we were just talking about photo engraving, and that's where I think of, like, say, the complete opposite, where if you're doing photo engraving and you want really, really fine detail, then maybe that 2-inch, 1.5-inch, those really, really tight spot sizes will be worth your time.
Yeah, definitely the opposite end of the 4-inch. I wouldn't be doing photos with a 4-inch lens.
Depends who they're of, I guess. I think, yeah.
Want that viewer effect, as like the filters you get online now to make yourself look a little smoother, maybe. There you go.
Yes. Listen, we're just coming up to the top of the hour. Again, I want to thank everybody so much for joining us here in the stream, particularly Dave. Of course, Dave jumped in last minute to make sure that you guys had somebody to hear from who could answer your questions and was knowledgeable. And I want to give him a huge thank you for joining us. We'll be back again, I believe, in a few weeks to do another one of these. And I mean, who knows? Hopefully, we'll be able to get Dave back. We'd love to have Kelly back again. We'd love to have Duncan back again. We really want to keep the chair rotating and get you guys as many answers and insights into Trotec and all the new and exciting things that we're launching as possible. A huge thank you to everybody in the chat. And once again, Dave, any final thoughts, any suggestions, any videos you want to point anybody to here at the last little bit?
Well, I'm trying to think of it. I mean, the other one we really didn't talk on is my new inlay video. It's also been it's super exciting. It's one that I've been working on for almost 20 years, and I've refined it to where I'm putting, pin sharp detail, and I can actually inlay a photograph now. So I literally inlaid a photograph to where I took a photograph, turned it to a black and white pattern, and inlaid it one veneer into another. So take a look at that. That's definitely, it even blew my own mind. So it's remarkable. Definitely worth a watch.
I concur 100%. Do not miss it. And again, I would suggest going back and watching that laser foil video once again. We kind of talked over it and gave a good, summation, I hope, of what was in there, but it is really worth your time. And if you'd like to try out the laser foil, do not miss going to our online web store where you can find it as the engraving-supplies.com or .ca, depending on where you are. As Dave suggested earlier, definitely don't miss mytrotec.ca, mytrotec.com for your local portal. There's great stuff on both. And I'll tell you a little secret. If you're in Canada, the .com still works. You can still pull it up. There's no long distance websites. You're totally fine. Same thing going in the other direction. I would highly encourage you to check out both. There's some great stuff either way. Thank you, everybody, once again for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again next time. I promise I will not be late next time. But in the meantime, take care of one another and have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.